All right. Thank you very much for attending Worldwide Slot Car Chat. I'm your host, Greg Galb, and we're got lots and lots of people here today. We got Steve Petrucci, Martin Dodd, Jeremy B, John Kitt, Leo, Mike, Martin, Paul, Big Den, Alan, Chris Walker, and others who are also non-camera, and we're going to have some fun. So as always, let's start with show and tell. And I know John has something that he wanted to show and presumably tell. So go and take the floor, John.
Okie doke. Thank you. Let me just share screen here first. And I have to have a very large caveat. This is a total shameless plug for my daughter's slot car company. She has gotten orders for various cars, and most recently her 340 Americas have actually been selling quite well for some reason. So she made a batch, and she actually has made 2 extras, and one is red, as you see here, and it's a front motor rear wheel drive with a drive shaft. So it's got a full interior, and it's fully finished, ready to go. And she actually, as you can see, even got the yellow dot on the steering wheel. Of course, without putting the prancing horse thing. And then she has an extra yellow one as well. And she does 3 styles. These 2, one is like the red one has no windscreen, and the yellow has the I guess you'd call them like the Goodwood windscreens. And they're resin body. They're quite thin, and the motors are basically equal to like an NC1. So if anybody is interested, by all means, and they're not, well, considering that they're handmade, there's a shot of the chassis. Basically, there's the motor, and we use the can of another motor to carry the drive shaft and the gear. And this is how you get the car.
And how much do they cost?
Actually, they were originally $175. She's actually, yeah, kudos to her. She's gotten better at making her cars, and so it takes her a lot less time. So rather than charge the same as she used to on her website, she hasn't changed it. It's $175. Now they're only $125 plus shipping.
They're nice.
Canadian or US?
US. I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, okay. we don't really have money here.
What's your website again, or her website?
Actually, you can order them directly through a great our email address, which is KIT9161 @rogers.com, and then you shoot us an email with your address and so forth, and we'll shoot you the product ASAP. But these 2 are ready to ship.
Cool beans.
And as you can
sell
see,
the bodies separately, John?
We don't actually, and I can show you why, because she designed them so that they fit with this particular chassis. So there are mounting posts on the side, and there's a full interior. Like the body comes out just as you see it from the mold. So I mean, apart from the driver and the steering wheel, but everything else comes out of the mold, including, believe it or not, if you can see the gear lever here, that actually comes out of the mold when it's cast. Wow. Yeah, again, my kudos to the kid. Like I thought I taught her a few tricks, and then she's teaching me a few tricks, which is really kind of nice.
As it John, is that a Piaggio Epi in the left-hand corner of that shot? The blue thing.
Oh, actually, it's a Mazda. It's a Mazda 3-wheeler. Yeah, it's one of those Japanese kits I put on.
Nice.
Sorry.
John, what are the wheels?
Oh, those are our resin wheels. They're actually resin copies of the BWA wheels with turned down Ninco wire wheel inserts, and the knockoffs are actually from the AutoArt Jag.
Okay.
So, which are more accurate for this time period, because it's basically the car that Phil Hill drove, I think, at Pebble.
Boy, they're pretty.
Oh, thank you. And 40 shore urethane tires, TSRF guide with brushes, and yeah.
Well, I'll be honest and say I'll be amazed if those cars are still in stock after this video is posted to YouTube. I'm gonna put the email in the description so anybody who's interested in either one of those cars can hit you guys up, and I'm sure they'll be gone quick. Those are beautiful.
That would be very cool because, as you know, the other thing too, she's realized that, you know, if you build 4, it takes almost as much time to build 6 or 8. So she built a couple of extras, and there they are.
The economics of scale.
It is scale. Scale.
Uh-huh.
So thanks for looking, and thanks for listening. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for showing that off. Does anybody else have any show and tell they want to share? New toys, new tools, new cars, new track? Okay, Mike, go ahead. You're muted. You're muted, Mike. Mike. There you go.
Okay, I've got 2. One is for a buddy of mine, and it's already lost its spoiler, but it's a 312 PB. Yeah, polycar.
Oh, okay, same difference.
Yeah, so it's a nice car. Motor's a little weak, so I put a Piranha in it, but other than that, it's okay. And yeah, and my buddies that I'm chipping for him so he can race it against me is the number 3 car. So
What chips are you putting in?
Slotted,
The 15s?
the regular ones.
Good deal. Electric digital slotted SP15. The way to go for those. Awesome.
That's a nice car. It's nice that it's got Regazzoni driving it too. I think that's cool.
Yeah, this one is Regazzoni and Eeks. Yeah, it's really neat car.
All right, cool, Mike.
So if it's Regazzoni driving it, then it's obviously not a resin model. It must be a clay model.
When I heard that accent, I thought, oh, I know who that is. And then when I heard the pun, I really knew who that is. Goeiemorgen, yeah.
Order, Dennis.
How's it going, Alvin? It's good to see you, man.
Cool, thanks. It's we had a bit of snow for a couple of days, but things are back to normal again now.
Well, we haven't done.
How's California?
We haven't done a racer intro for a while. Alvin, do you want to give us a slot car history of Alvin?
Oh boy, I'm another one of the 60s guys. Got a scale electric track when I was like in grade 5 or 6 or something like that. We had a local wood track in the neighboring town, which I used to bicycle to. And it was the regular thing for those days, truck battery with a charger on it, and used to run AMT brass chassis cars and dynamic or Mabushi 26Ds. And then it stopped. And then about 12 years ago, I came across one of my cars and I thought, do people still do this? So I asked Google, do people still do this? And I got some interesting answers, and I decided to be more specific and ask about slot cars. And came across LAF's website. And the rest is history. LAF is the ultimate pusher. You know, he said, yeah, sure. I emailed him, do you still do this? He said, yeah, we're racing on Friday. Come and join us. And he showed me the cars, and he let me run some cars, and then I was totally hooked. And here we are.
Classic story.
Yes, it's the same story that about 1 million people have.
Just about. Well, don't we wish? I wish some of them would join us here. But in lieu of that, then we have Who's Here. And I think I saw Mr. Petrucci was ready to do some show and tell. You want to go ahead and unmute yourself and then show us and tell us?
Just this come the other day, tire razor.
Nice.
With all the bits. I've got the lathe with it. I've got a load of plastic wheels I want to start cutting. And I've got this as well, this dial. I was just wondering, what do I do with this?
Pull it
You
back
see what
closer
it
to
is.
your head, please.
What is it?
Oh, an offset gauge. So some people will use that to determine the roundness of a tire while it's spinning, because basically when it, goes high and low, then the gauge will move. It's a
Is that a
measuring
dial
tool.
indicator, or was it a durometer for the hardness of the tire?
Oh yeah, could be that too. Is it something that just measures how far it
It's
pushes?
on the side of the tire raiser. Well, I haven't.
no.
Probably
it'll
not
be
at
a
the
dial
top of
indicator.
it. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's an offset caliper basically.
Yeah, then it'll be a
That's-
dial indicator. Yeah.
It has a pin that you push and it moves the dial around to show you how much.
Show any out of round.
That's something new.
Yeah, I've never used one of those. It's never been that important to me, but I've definitely seen it done.
Well, the important part is not to know is not the important part is not using it. The important part is finding out how to use it, because that's what keeps your brain alive.
There you go.
Right? Yeah, it does. It stretches your brain every time you've got something that's brand new that you've never used before. You play and you play and you play, or you read and you read and you read until you find out how it works, and that stretches your brain. That's good.
Well,
That's why slot cars is such a great hobby, because it's all about the tools.
Yes.
Learn
I've
something.
got loads of plastic wheels, so I know you can cut them down for inserts.
Yep.
So I've been trying to get one for a long time. Every time I tried, it had sold out. I managed to get one the other day.
Did you get it directly from John or from a retailer?
I got it from Slot Car Corner.
Slot Car Corner. Okay, yeah, they're basically his retailer. Good deal.
Yeah, nice. Those are nice if the plastic wheel still has enough of a boss inside it in order to be able to put it on the axle and turn it down. But a lot of times you have broken wheels, and then it's a little bit of a problem. Then it's nice to have a chuck that you can actually grab it on the inside bead and then turn the outside down. But that you need a lathe for that.
Actually, Dennis, have you? Oh, I was going to say, have you ever tried to cut the axle so that you've got, the wheel still on the axle, so it's relatively secure?
I haven't tried that, but that I don't know. Yeah, you'd have to cut it at one end in order to have enough of it to put in the tire raiser, and then you've got one tire that's got a short piece and one tire that's got a long piece. So that I don't know that would be the way.
Yeah, I guess it would be okay if you were casting the inserts, but if you need all four, you're
Sure,
right. That's a bit of a challenge. Yeah.
But I mean, if people have got broken wheels and they want them turned down, and you know how big they've got to be, put them in a packet, send them to me. I can do them for you for a price.
I'm not sure what kind of attachments the tire raiser lathe accessory has. I never got a lathe for my tire raiser.
I think it's basically just the cross slide and the tool, and you still use the same drive system, but there's no chuck as far as I know.
I'm sure it'd be much better than just using a Dremel tool and a piece of sandpaper.
Oh yeah, of course.
You could probably, if you had access to a 3D printer or a friend who's got one, print basically a new inner part that press fits into the outer ring, right, and then has a hole in the center for the axle, and then do that. But you'd have to probably tear away whatever broken part of the wheel is.
That's fine. Yeah, that's a pretty good idea. Yeah, you've got to watch anytime you turn those things. You've got to watch how the wheel starts to break down as you start reducing the diameter because of all the internal moldings and so on. Sometimes you'll push the wheel onto a shaft and start turning it down. The next thing you know, it's broken, and the piece that you're trying to turn down isn't small enough yet. And so those kind of things also happen because of the way that the wheel is constructed. But again, It's a nice brain exercise.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Dennis, to your point, like those Ninco inserts, the wire inserts, that's exactly what happens if you're not really careful.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, that's good tools, Patricia. Good tools.
Yeah. I'm gonna start using that next week, and we'll see how we get on.
All right. Well, let us know and ask us questions if you run into something.
Will do.
Oh, I've got it working.
Hey, Paul. Good to see you again. Do you have anything you want to show and tell, or does anybody else have anything they want to show and tell? Oh, printer. Let me zoom in here. Ender 3 Pro.
Oh, you've got one.
Very nice.
Welcome to the dark side.
Yeah. Welcome to the crazy house.
One of us.
Yeah. Welcome to the crazy house.
So, what did you have to buy your wife to keep her quiet?
I think.
Oh, you're lucky.
Actually, you're not going to buy a thing. You're going to print it for her, right?
That's it.
What colour spools did he get, Paul? Yellow and blue by any chance?
Oh, I haven't even opened it.
Well, yeah, you're going to have some fun and some learning experiences. And speaking of tools, that's just a tool. You got to learn how to use the tool. So,
Yeah.
Awesome.
Took me 10 minutes to figure out to work laptops, get it to work properly, let alone work that.
Yep.
I would have figured it took more than 10 minutes to work out how to put it together, too.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, those are on the relatively easy side to put together, I believe.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Not like putting together a build of materials off-the-shelf parts printer.
Yeah, true.
Does anybody else have anything they want to show and tell before I dig out my topic? Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, I found a couple of boxes. I got some really old Skeletrix Coopers here.
Woo!
Even got the paperwork in them. So, I thought, do I sell them or what do I do with them? And it's like, no, I'll keep them and play with them. I'm not going to get anything for them.
Yeah.
But you would, but that's not the point.
No shelf please.
It's even got a little elastic band for the steering. I mean,
Wow.
So
load of rubbish to drive.
Martin, you found someone else who wasn't allowed to play with their toys.
No, I bought a box a couple of years back. As father of a friend died, and he had loads of stuff to give away, and I just sort of helped him out by buying a load of the Skeletrix gear off him. And
Cool.
I got 4 of these, I think. Yeah, I got red, green, white, and a Porsche, a C86 Porsche, amongst other things. So I'm just going to keep them and use them gently and sedately and have a bit of fun with them.
I've got the box for those. The 4-lane racing.
Oh, yeah.
And that's still with its mini models outer sleeve over the box.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. Yeah, because they are MM/ whatever the numbering is MM/. So I think they're not Triang Hornby, are they? There's
They're mini models.
Mini models Hornby, yeah. And then
it should say haven't on it.
Yeah, that's a haven't. Yeah, I forgot they moved along the coast, man. And just one for Wayne. They all say that it's much bigger. That's actually a catalogue cover. I found out. That one up there. It's a reproduction of the catalogue cover. Wayne was asking a couple of weeks ago.
That's right. I did a little looking around myself after that conversation.
There's some good stuff on eBay, isn't there? It's all reproduction, but some nice stuff to stick in your wall.
Well, that one was actually on several sets, if I'm not mistaken. I can find reference to that picture in several places, but yours is a catalogue cover. That's why it doesn't say set 60 or set 90 or whatever.
Yeah, that's the only place I could find was a catalogue cover. There's very similar ones on set boxes, but that was a catalogue cover. By the looks of it.
Thanks for that.
I'm done, guys.
I'm amazed that the rubber band is still in one piece. That's remarkable.
Yeah, and it is original. I've got another one which is the car's been used a bit more, and it's quite delicate and quite petrified. And one completely without one, so I'm gonna have to try and work out what size to put in the missing one. But the wheels even do this as well as that. So I'm just gonna keep those and make sure the grandchildren don't get to see them.
You wait till you try and change the brushes on them.
Oh God, yeah. Put something soft on it.
They're only that big.
Well, I got to keep my bicycle tires with the stiffness and those things, and my bicycle chains. So yeah, I'm gonna put some slot and something like that in there. So that's me done.
All right, thanks for sharing, Martin. Anybody else before I pull out my topic?
I've got one, Greg.
Go ahead, Chris.
It's I'm building This picture is a bit bizarre. It's distorted. I'm building some, building up a couple of thunder slots for a couple of proxies. Is that up?
Yep.
So I'm just taking a few thunder slot white kits and painting them up for actually Alwyn's Can-Am proxy that's coming up. So
What's distorted? Am I not seeing the distortion? I think my
no, I mean, it just looks hideously wide.
okay.
Even more hideously wide than it really is.
It's because you're doing a close up with your camera lens.
Yeah, there's probably. Let me try one more picture. Let's see if that works any better.
Yeah, that looks more normal.
Yeah, the wheels are just sitting there right now. I'm not happy with the way they turned out, so I'm going to redo those. So those are just two front wheels just sitting there, and the body's just sitting on the setup plate. So nothing special. Anyway, just a repaint or just a fresh paint, and see where we go from there.
What's that blue color? What is it called?
That is called Tamiya Light Blue Pearl.
Okay, nice.
Yeah,
And
Chris,
is it white pearl or silver pearl in the middle?
No, that's all just plain Tamiya pure white.
Oh,
on
okay.
the stripe.
Chris, are the
Nice.
grills original from the kit, or have you put something else in them?
Sorry?
Are the grills, are they the
No,
originals from the white kit?
No, if you go to the dollar store and you can buy all kinds of tea strainers and all kinds of stuff with metal grills on it. So
You just find the one that fits to you, is it?
yeah, just cut the grills out and replace them with these really fine mesh things that, you know.
Or
That's
if you
beautiful.
Or if you go to a hardware store and you look for the little filters that they put in the aerators on the end of a kitchen sink water outlet,
Oh yeah, yeah.
those little ones are they're only like 3/4 of an inch diameter, but they're super fine if you really want very, very fine stuff. Sometimes finer than a tea strainer or things like this.
Yeah, good tips. Thanks, gents.
Okay.
Well, these are actually, I mean, they're tiny. Those are very fine.
Yeah, I see that.
And I got a great, I got it, I don't know what it was, a frying pan oil restraining lid top or something for $1 at the dollar store. So I got enough grill material to last me for 50 years.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing.
Nice.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Well, we're going to pull out a topic, and this is a topic that we kind of touched on before the recording started. So hopefully our respondees won't be tired of saying these things. But the question is, how do printed slot car bodies, and I'm going to add chassis as well, and any other 3D printed part, compare in durability to manufactured ones? Resin or filament, whatever kind of 3D printing, whatever kind of comparison you want to make. Take it away, Steve.
I don't think there's much difference. Maybe Group C cars is a good example. That class we race a lot. The bodies are very thin. And if any retail car is going to break, it's probably one of those on our track. And 3D printed ones, we printed several to race against them. And we've never had a 3D printed body break, even when it's missed the track and gone against the wall, which it has. Never a chassis. I probably have 40 cars with 3D printed chassis. Probably every car I have now, as I've replaced guides or needed a deeper guide for somebody's track, those are all 3D printed. Never had one of those break. This is all PLA. So I don't know. I can't respond to any of the others. I can't respond to 3D printed resin either, because I don't know anything about it as far as its durability. But from my perspective, we've got them down now, so they're just as light as any other body, and they are just as durable. Maybe the only other thing to add is if we print them really thin, say at 0.6, that's thin. That's a thin slot car body. And we'll do 0.8 at the thickest, 0.7, 0.6, depends on the design of the car. But we will coat the inside of the side fenders, which is always the weakest part, with CA glue. You know, once we pull the supports out, and that really, really strengthens them up. Not so much from the racing itself, but from when you're going to work on it, like sanding it or this kind of stuff. But I have no problems with them. And none of the guys that raced here, there's a lot of guys here who are running 3D printed cars, you know.
What's your average body weigh, Steve?
Pardon?
What's the average weight of a body?
I have no idea. I don't have a scale.
Okay.
Paul does and Brian does, and they've commented that, you know, they'll send an email and say, boy, this one's light, you know, it weighs the same as, and so on. I don't know. Yeah, I really don't.
Okay. Because I got one from Paul, and I think it was, what did I get?
Which car was it?
Well, I think it was the 712 Ferrari Can-Am car.
That's hip. Yeah, that's not real light.
No, that was north of 40 grams.
Yeah, that was one of the earlier CAD cars. That might have been, that car was printed. Oh my God, had that for about a year. Good news is that the McLaren chassis fits right under it. The slot at McLaren, if you want to do a chassis, it's actually really quick.
Well, actually, at 42 grams, I respectfully declined to even build it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was.
It's going to come down to the. It's going to come down to the CAD. You know, the model itself.
It is.
You know, you can do some tweaks to try to lighten up a thick model, but you're better off having a model that was designed to be as light as possible. And that's,
yeah, it depends on so much stuff. I mean, like I'm building a Lola T222 right now. Well, the whole rear end of that car is cut out, so there's nothing there, just this two side fenders coming along. So suddenly that car is automatically really pretty big cockpit. In other words, there's two big holes in it, so it's very, very light. Built a 612 Ferrari, I couldn't get that light to save me because it's all pretty solid car with just a small cockpit, no cutouts in the back. I mean, everything helps.
now, Leo, I believe you've done some 3D printed cars of various kinds. Just chassis. Oh, you're muted still.
Only a very limited success. So 1/43 scale Porsche GT3 chassis for the Carrera Proxy that's running in Germany. I think it starts next week. Yes, no, I've not printed any bodies.
Did you print the chassis, or did you get somebody else?
Yeah,
you printed. Yeah. And how would you compare that if you were just to, you know, I'm not expecting you to go wall the car just to test its durability, but if you were to say, you know, sport chassis, Sport, yeah, how would you say, you know, were you surprised or pleased at the print? You know, what were your impressions of the print?
Yeah, I was actually surprised that the print was very durable, very well designed, I suppose. German, so therefore well designed, to be a bit racist there. But yes, it was very solid, very stiff chassis, 1/43 scale, so maybe stiff enough for sort of standard sort of Carrera type car. But yes, it was fine. It's fine. The guide was Wayne was asking about the guide, and the guide was in 3 parts, so sort of the base, and then 2 segments which formed the actual blade. And that I worried about that, but it was fine as well. I had to glue the blades into the base, but it was fine. It worked fine and seemed to be okay. The outcome of the proxy racing might tell a different story, but driving it at home here and testing it at home was fine.
What are you showing off there, Steve?
Well, this is what I mean by the cutout. You know, so the Lola's, it's not much body here. So this, you know, printed at 0.6, this is going to be well, it is, extremely light. That 612, of course, this was all filled in back here. So,
Yeah, you still got to put engine detail in there, right?
yes. I can show you. In fact, I just printed it.
So that's going to add some weight back to it.
It will.
You got your printer going now, Dennis?
No, not well. Yeah, my printer's working. It's just that I'm not using it right now. I've had so much other stuff going on.
Yeah,
you're right. Here's the piece. That's going to be in there, and you're right.
Wow, that looks cool.
That is pretty
really nice. Yeah, very nice.
That's going to be a tough little car.
Yeah.
Carreras was so out of scale. We finally got a really good CAD model that's scaled right.
It's a 222, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Is that designed to go over the Carrera chassis, or is it going to come with it?
No, it'll be 3D printed. Carrera car was just, I had a couple of them. They're so out of scale, I just sold them.
Is that the one you linked to on the website the other day, the one for purchase?
No, that was a Lotus 30.
Okay.
Somebody wanted that.
It's beautiful body.
I'll show you the Lotus 30. It's kind of neat.
I'd love for you to chip in on this, Brian.
Well, I don't have a whole lot of experience doing the bodies. I've done a few. Chassis wise, I've done a ton. Durability wise, I've got no problem with chassis. Anything that I've had a durability issue on my chassis, it's been my design, not the filament itself. Chassis wise, I don't think there's any difference.
No,
they may be stronger.
So this is the Lotus 30.
Oh, nice.
That's the one that's in process, as you can see, but extremely light. I found a guy in Spain. I found a guy in Spain that will build them for me he's really an excellent CAD guy. And he'll build these for me for really pretty cheap. And my deal with him is then he's I pay for the first one. And then he puts them up on his website. And that's where that link is that you saw to the Lotus 30.
I love the fact that he had all the components there for it too, the roll bars, engine, everything.
He did because the main buyers of these things are not slot car guys still, they're model guys, and you just have.
You said about putting the CA around inside the wheel arches. Could you just show us? I would have thought that would
no, just not the wheel, the sides.
The side pods.
Right here. So just inside there, right inside.
Yeah.
Or because the front's never weak. The fronts are always, plenty strong.
Okay.
It's the sides. The problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take the flex out. Yeah.
Just about all of them. This is a pretty delicate side because its curves are pretty extreme.
Well, Steve, that's one heck of an undercut on that body,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Lotus 30 to get a side wider under this has been a trial, but I've got it.
Well, what motor are you using?
We either use Piranhas or Slotted orange can. That's it. We limit it to those two for the Can-Am cars.
Well, if it's any consolation, Chapman had the same problem.
He had more problems than that with his car in real life. He could never get it going.
No.
Yeah, he had a small block in this originally, and for some reason, and thought he was going to go over there and, take on 454 Chevys. It wasn't going to happen.
Well, Clark did his best with it, though.
Well, then he went to then they put a big engine in the 40. A bigger engine. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And then when Ginther drove it, he said it was the Lotus 30 plus 10 more mistakes.
I think it's one of the prettiest bodies in a race car. Yeah. This and the Scarab ever made.
I agree.
70.
In fact, the guy over in Spain that built this is right now caddying out a Scarab for me. So that's kind of neat.
Is there actually a website that you can go to get all these bodies? Or
explain all. I mean, there's a lot of websites that have bodies. Yes.
So this
Tons of-
specific one that you're referencing, this guy is now selling the model files. What site is that?
It's his site.
Yeah.
And he's just a little dude over there making CAD models, trying to pick up some money, on the side.
Paid him 15 euro. That's all he was charged. It's pretty
Well, what I'm
reasonable.
leading to, yes, he has a website, so you can pay him through PayPal and download, but it's not commercial. It's not, like the large sites.
Sure. Well, can you put the link in the chat or something, or somebody put the link down there?
Yeah, I showed the body of the Lotus, made a comment how, when I first printed the Lotus, I thought, I'm not even going to build this. It just doesn't look like much. But I went ahead and sprayed it and got it. It's one of those cars. And I think how I worded it was, every now and then there's a car that you get the paint on it and everything changes.
Yeah, well, it comes to life.
Yeah, and the Lotus 30, it literally became one of the prettiest bodies I've ever seen. It just is, the shapes and the contours and so on. And so I posted that, and then somebody asked, where can I get it? So I emailed the guy in Spain. I said, are you ready to sell them on your little website? He said, sure, I can put it up. And so I sent the link, and that's how that happened. And he gets 18 euros for it. It's not going to break your bank. That's it.
I'll see if I can get that link and put it in the description later on, or if anybody finds it and wants to put it.
I'll have to send. I'll have to send it to you, Greg, or it's on. I forget the thread.
I've got it. It's on
I just did it.
It's on that thread that says, there it is. He put it on 3dprintable.shop.
So he's
okay.
Paul, if you feel a breeze, that's you falling down the rabbit hole.
I just want to know where is there like a site that you can go to and there's like a big list of bodies and you go, oh, I'll have that one, and that one.
No,
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 because I like your shadows you've done. They are absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you. Shadows are done by a guy in Australia named Nimrod, who will gladly send you the files, or go ahead and PM me, Racer1H, and I'll get them to you.
Okay.
Or the DN4s. The Mark IIs, yeah, we can send you those too. The rest of them, I can certainly send you the files, but they're going to be a whole bunch of work because I'm not very good at CAD.
Well, mine's still in its box, so.
Greg,
All right.
was that a deux cheveux when you
Yeah, there were. Yeah, that's 3D printable has got stacks of nice stuff on it, but you really have to look for it.
Doesn't it? Really
yeah,
does.
you really have to look for it.
That's got the Thunderbolt on it, isn't it? The Falcon Thunderbolt on that site. I like that.
I even found one of my own road car. So
you can find almost anything that isn't a full bore, race car, Le Mans car. They just haven't caught that much yet because the market isn't that big. Mm-hmm. That's why we've been making our own Can-Am cars. Kind of a group of us got organized and started making them. You won't find many Can-Am cars on the web. I think loose that you can buy, there's maybe 3. They're just. But other stuff, my God, name any Ford, Chevy, Hot Rod, Mercury.
I like the Can-Am.
That's the 40. That's nice.
That is gorgeous.
What scale is that, Chris?
1/24.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Boy, that's
go away, please.
Is that a slot car model?
Yep.
That's beautiful. Who made that?
What's about to be quiet now?
Shell comes from Dieter Jens in Germany.
Beautiful. Just beautiful. Just beautiful.
He does a nice shadow as well, doesn't he?
He does nice everything.
Those German guys do some really fine design, and those guys, they do some fantastic work.
I've got a keep going. Keep talking. I'll just find it. I'm going to look for a shadow picture.
Well, does anybody else want to chip in on the how do printed bodies and chassis compare to?
Yeah, I'll chip in.
Chassis?
I'll chip in. Not that I have a lot of personal experience, but having hosted a number of proxy races through the last 18 months or so, there's been a proliferation of 3D chassis, and we have never had a single chassis break or have any major trouble at all. So I think on the chassis side, certainly the stuff that's commercially available as 3D print is just as good as anything that's available as a molding. When it comes to bodies, we haven't seen that many 3D printed bodies yet, because the genre of each proxy has generally been something that has used readily available bodies from the major manufacturers. We've had a couple of resin bodies come through in some of them, and there we've had problems with resin bodies breaking. The one that springs to mind immediately was one of Matt McDonough's the CG slot cars those early shadows, the very, very flat orangey brown car, the number $1 car.
Yeah.
That one, we broke the front off it because that resin just could not handle any kind of hard impact. But as far as 3D printed is concerned, we haven't had a problem. I would agree with Steve as far as the sides of the body. If you're trying to print thin and stay light, certainly the couple that I've printed so far, that's where the problem is. You've got to be sure that you have decent layer-to-layer adhesion. That's all I can say about it.
Yeah, I've had the same issue with brittle on my resin printed. I dropped a couple. I literally dropped it out of my hand. The stock car landed on the nose and it shattered in half. But again, I've only dealt with one type of resin, and I mean, it may have just landed perfectly, but 3D printed filament bodies, I've not had an issue. Resin ones, brittle.
Yeah, I think you're probably going to have to adjust the type of resin you use for that.
Yeah, and there's a wide variety of resins, just like there is a wide variety of filaments. So it's just a matter of, trying.
I've got some new stuff in the ABS, like it's called by LED. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm hoping it'll be a little more flexible.
And after stinking up my house with the Soraya Tech blue, supposedly more, resilient resin, I have not attempted another print with that again, but
and Soraya Tech makes that tenacious as well. That everybody talks about. Mix 20% of that in with your standard resin. It's supposed to make it quite nice. But I haven't got $65 for a kilo of it.
Yeah, it's not cheap, that's for sure. And when you get into exotic filaments, they're not cheap either. But yeah, I'm sure that's going to be where it's at, is finding a good resin or mixture of resins to get the kind of resiliency you want, because the technology is certainly there to make a body equivalent to a production injection molded body. It's just getting that right material so that it's not going to shatter when you drop it.
Yeah, I've had some beautiful prints, but again, it's a learning curve. And just like filament, we had a limited choice when it first really kicked off. Like you said, now there's a gazillion of them. Same thing with resin, coming out with resin almost every day, it seems like. So I think it's just a matter of time before we end up with 12.
Well, the thing with the resin, interestingly enough, is that the resin printing technology is older than the filament printing technology. It's just that the resin manufacturing and printers have long been industrial, not consumer. And so all the good resins are not sold in, liters to consumers. They're sold in, giant gallon sized things to big industrial companies. Eventually those will end up needing to, finding their way to consumers. So that's
probably more like 55-gallon drums.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're just churning through it. Good stuff.
My experience with 3D printed chassis and body shells is about 5 years long. It's not very many, but back in 2016, when I first attended a 24-hour Disca Le Mans race, there were a lot of 3D printed chassis there. 3D printed body shells, my experience with those is that they're usually a little bit ugly and a little bit heavy. I do know that the race has been won by a 3D printed body shell. I have run the race with a 3D printed body shell, it broke. But then all injection molded body shells also break in that race doing those speeds for that duration. So body breakage is not uncommon in that race, particularly wings. But usually the front corners can get broken off too. So I haven't seen a body shell that's not going to break, period. But I think the only issue with 3D printed bodies at the moment is the layer lines that you can see in them. They need quite a bit of work to get rid of. But once they're smooth and one thing and another, I think they're just as strong as anything else. And certainly the chassis, because there's a lot less layer lines of an issue, because you're normally only printing, I don't know how many layers, but only a few to get a chassis base plate thickness. They're as strong as anything in ABS. That's just my experience, limited as it is.
And as we've gone over before, there's at least 3 major types of 3D printing, and so your experience with the ugliness of 3D printed bodies is probably either heavy layer lines on a filament printer, or the kind of sandpapery texture of a nylon printed body shell, or it's definitely getting better. With the resin technology, the layer lines are practically not there and they sand away very easily. But
Greg, could it also be a matter of how the file was created and the file itself?
I mean, that we're going on the base assumption that the file is a really nice file. and then it's down to the printer technology and the person who's running the printer as to how good it's going to end up looking. But yeah, I mean, things are always getting better, which is the nice thing. Is cheaper, faster, better.
Well, yeah, I mean, look what Steve's Lotus 30, that Lotus 30 is nothing but curves. And I would never have thought that could come out of a 3D printer like that.
And that was filament printing, right, Steve?
Yeah, PLA.
Yeah.
Nothing fancy.
Do you remember how thick your layers were on that?
I mean, he's right when he asks about the files. That still is a big deal, Greg, as you know. I mean, when you want, like, Can-Am cars are our main interest, and 50s, early 60s vintage sports cars. Those are kind of the 2 areas we really, really have made tons of cars in. And files coming from great CAD guys. This Lotus guy is very good. The shadows, he wanted the DN4s. Okay, buy some sandpaper. They're early files, and the guy isn't a great CAD guy. He's good. He's gotten better and better. Those were built about a year ago. He's the same guy that built this Lola T22, which is wonderful, smooth body lines. I mean, little things like body lines took a while to get a handle on for CAD guys. I mean, it's just the quality of the file is a big deal. You know that, Greg, as well as anybody. I mean, you're going to get files from all over the place. Some of them you're going to work a lot. My God, it's a 1/32 car. How much sanding can it take? And you can sand any of them while you watch the news. I mean, my wife just comments. I just sit in front of the TV with a little, watch the news and sand the latest printed car, and that's about it. Prime it.
And Steve, to your point, it's no different than if you're physically casting something. The more time you spend on the original to throw rubber or whatever you're using to cast over it, the better the mold, the better the production of whatever you're doing.
It's not much different than getting the resin bodies. I mean, I've done a lot of resin bodies before the printing, and depending on who made it, you get one of Reneke's bodies, they were great. You get Joe Blow's body, you're sanding forever. I mean, it's just the way it is. But in the end, it's a little tiny toy. It's a slot car. It's only this big. It's not like you're out in your garage sanding your Cobra.
Do you remember how many or what your layer height thickness was on that car?
This is 0.6.
0.06.
0.06, correct.
Okay. That makes more sense. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's about as good as most.
That's the first one I've got.
Pardon?
That's the first car I've ever bought. 3D printed car.
That'll be the Area 71, will it?
Oh, it certainly is.
So it has
Where
that.
was it?
Chassis. Look at the chassis.
Sorry, Paul, is that a 250 LM?
Yeah.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's also got a carbon fiber in the material, has it not?
I don't know.
I believe that one is extremely light.
It is.
Yeah, those Area 71 cars are very, very light and very strong.
It is so light. It's unreal.
Yeah, I think all Marco's black ones are the ones with carbon fiber in, aren't they? He prints them in white. They've got carbon
Yeah,
fiber.
it's a powder of some sort that they use.
That's the nylon.
Yeah, it's that Shapeways production technique that can build without supports, and
So
that's how the
sintering is what it's called. It's basically a heated chamber of powder that's screed over layer by layer, and then a laser melts it. It's just below melting point, and then a laser melts it, and then it screeds another layer of powder. Does that over and over and over. So it's always some kind of nylon blend, but in that case, obviously there's some carbon fiber in there as well.
Yeah, there was an announcement this week. Marco's selling his stuff through Pendle now, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
And all the good stuff's out of stock. What a surprise!
Well, I think it's because they probably haven't. They've set up the catalog, but they haven't received the parts yet. Because I don't know that Marco has enough production capacity to fill what's going to come once Pendle and I presume there's going to be a similar thing out here. There was talk of an announcement about an American distributor as well, which I haven't heard exactly who it is yet.
Now, Big Dan, is that an original Hawk you've got there?
It's a Hawk kit, John.
Oh yeah.
Unbuilt so far. There's the main body part.
Yeah, that's a nice body. They actually did a really good job on Hawk and Strombecker. I think had the two nicest ones.
Yeah, and to get the undertuck, it's your separate moldings which are still in the box, and I haven't got enough hands to hold up. So, but to Steve's point earlier on about the scale, compare that against the Carrera Porsche 917 or whatever it is. Have a look at it.
Well, in real life, there probably was a big difference in size anyway, even though the Carrera is still a bit over scale. But
yeah, but then I look at Carrera's Porsche against the Opel Jumbo, which was a pretty big sedan. So, it's even bigger than that. So.
Yeah, I think the Carrera is a little needs a little liposuction.
Yeah, maybe like.
They're bringing one in, aren't they?
And a pin guide.
Yeah, the nylon printing is incredibly expensive. So you pretty much don't get a nylon printer unless you're going into production. And I know a person who is getting a used one, so he's basically got the same capability as Shapeways and Area 71. I believe Area 71 has their own printer now. But even used for, consumer size capacity of this kind of machine, like I could print the same volume on my $200 Ender 3 if I had one. That machine to do that much volume in nylon is used $10,000. And that's just the printer. You still need to get the machine that helps clean all the unsintered powder off of your prints, and the various other machines to complete the whole process.
But Greg, why is it so expensive? Like, why is it so much more expensive?
I mean, it's a lot more complicated technology. You basically have to have a machine that's able to keep this chamber of material just below melting temperature the whole time. And then you have to have a powerful enough laser that gets it to melting temperature without heating up the stuff next to it, right? Because if you just have a weak laser, you're just going to melt a whole bunch of stuff. And then the mechanics that put another very, very fine layer of the stuff over, and then repeats the process, and the whole time keeping it at the perfect temperature yeah, I mean, I know the fundamentals of it, but you know, it's like anything, you know, eventually that kind of machine will be more consumer friendly, consumer purchasable. Like last year I saw a thing where this kid in college was essentially developing consumer level SLS printer technology, you know, that you could build yourself. You know, the most expensive thing is the laser itself, a high enough wattage laser to do the actual sintering. But you're still talking about, you know, thousands of dollars worth of hardware.
Yeah, John, you'd be surprised how simple a 3D filament printer is mechanically as far as the machine itself. In that case, it's the software that does the work.
Yeah.
What Greg's talking about, you know, the machine itself is a lot more sophisticated.
I would say it's comparable in that a resin printer is one motor and the screen. That's the simplest as it gets. And then you've got your filament printer, which has upwards of 3 or 4 or 5 motors all working independently, doing what they're supposed to do. And then up from there, you got the nylon printing. It's just, you know, all this.
Oh, so just in the way that the head moves is also more complex?
I mean, I don't know, you know, it might just be a mirror controlled laser. I don't know, you know, I'm sure there's different ways that they do it. It's probably just that it has to be, you know, semi-industrial level machinery to keep the heated chamber at the right temperature, you know, perfectly the right temperature the whole time, and the laser, and then, you know, there's definitely mechanics in that. You've got to have a mechanism to perfectly lay a new level of powder over it and not be too thick or too thin. And, you know, then the whole thing goes up or down, and, you know. Yeah.
So it sounds like nylon printing still at the level of like a Bond film.
Yeah, pretty much.
Speaking of at the level of a Bond film, I watched a video on YouTube this week of a similar machine doing the same process with aluminium.
Yeah.
And it was a piston for a piston engine that Porsche have produced. And by using a technique called topographical optimization, which is assessing all the load paths in the piston, they've printed a piston that looks sinuous, like it's got muscles, particularly its underside. And that piston is 10% lighter than an aluminium forged or cast piston. And now they've got that running in an engine, and they think they're about 10 years away from putting that in a production car. But it's a fascinating video. I don't know how to find it, but it's on YouTube. It's recently uploaded, and I strongly suggest you have a look at that. The machine they were doing it on is as big as a 5-axis industrial CNC mill. It would take a room to occupy, and it looked like it probably millions of pounds worth of equipment. Of course, when it's done, it goes for non-destructive crack testing and analysis, and then it comes back to the factory for some machining, and then it goes into the car. But yeah, fascinating production technique. I just wondered what the benefit of using nylon was compared to the other methods, like your resin or your filament deposits. Do you know that? Do you know, Greg?
I mean, I could make some educated guesses, but no, I mean, nylon isn't the only type of material that they can do. You know, they can do, like you were just saying, with aluminum powder or other materials. I think nylon is just the most common because it probably has a very thin threshold between melted and not melted. The glass transition temperature is probably a very narrow band of temperature, so you can get it just below that and then kick it over with the laser. Whereas some materials would start to transition and you would lose fidelity in the model. Much.
Yeah, there's got to be very, very high resolution in those. It looks like Martin's already found a link to the YouTube video I mentioned. He's put it in the chat notes.
All right.
All these guys that can multitask, and the women tell us we can't do 2 things at once.
Yeah.
We're so good at it.
Talking about doing 2 things at once, I've been getting to. I don't know if you guys can see this. This was a 24-hour.
That looks illegal to me.
Alan, that looks like racing in the late
Clouds.
70s, early 80s.
Is that
Yeah, in the clouds, that is.
It certainly wasn't as much fun as it looks. That's about 6 hours of work to get about 5 grams out of that body shell. And my clue to the 3D body shells is they're rough, they're tough, they don't break very easily, but they're very heavy. When you consider,
Yeah, that's addicted to slot racing, that is.
Yeah. When you consider an NSR Mosler body can be got down to about, 13 grams. And these things, I mean, eye-watering to think that they can be up to 40 grams when they come out of the printer. And all of that's got to come off to make a competitive racer. So, those cars have got to be scraped down. And I usually use a modeling knife, and then I use sandpaper. But I'm working on a machine.
I didn't realize how popular slot racing was in Colombia.
That's a good point, in that the only reason you had to scrape off that much material is because the design that was printed was thick, right? And that the nylon print, the SLS printers can certainly have printed it thinner if the model that it was printing was thinner. It's certainly not a limitation of the technology, but the person who designed that model either didn't want to push the limits of the technology, or didn't understand the limits of the technology,
or didn't need to,
or didn't care, and they just designed the shell and said, okay, print this shell, and whatever the weight is whatever the weight is.
Well, no, Greg, to your point, it could have been designed and originally as a static model, right?
Or maybe that person had filament printing in mind, where
this older I've forgotten the name of the company that does it, but I think it's a guy in Belgium, and there are quite a lot of these racing the 24-hour Le Mans. It's quite a popular car, but I think to make it work, doing a lot of work with razor blades, modeling knives, and sandpaper is
Alan,
is in
it's not Stephen Verlest, is it, Steve?
Yeah,
that's him, yeah, SV Works.
SV Works, that's them, yes.
You look how thin this is. I don't know if you can see the arches. Can you see?
Oh, wow.
I mean, so it's just like, look.
Yeah, they're as thin as any injection molded piece, and probably a little stronger.
The actual finish to it is.
That's the biggest issue I'm aware of with those carbon printed TA71s. The surface finish takes quite a bit of work to get to a paintable finish.
The other one, who my friend has got one. He said 2 rubs with some wet 2000 grit and sprayed it over, and it was fine. So but you've got to be so careful because you've got such fine detail, like all that.
But Paul, I'm amazed, first of all, at how thin it is, but second of all, how nice the curves are.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It is beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Because that car doesn't really have a straight line.
No.
No, there's definitely quality in the CAD work there, isn't there?
He's really, really good.
And on the back, you got 2 little where the exhaust pipes are.
Well, now you got to go to now you have to go to the dollar store, just like Chris.
Yeah.
Get your tea strainer.
Actually, I know where's some strainers in the kitchen.
Uh-oh.
We might have some big holes in.
I've got some data.
You'll be
I'll just show
spitting
you.
tea leaves for the next year if you do that.
I've got some data. I don't know if you can see my screen, but that's a comparison for 3D print. Well, between PLA and ABS.
Yeah,
it says the durability of ABS is about 8 out of 10. My apologies. And the durability of PLA is 4 out of 10. Oh. And the weight or the mass is that PLA is marginally heavier.
What is this?
This is just the Google search results for.
Oh, okay.
PLA density.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see the numbers.
I just it also involved just whacking it or something.
Yeah.
Putting it under stresses that we normally don't. So
that is I don't know if you can see that. That's the cockpit to it. And the steering wheel is absolutely thin as it's mental. I can't get
Do you have
over
any,
it.
Paul, do you have any drug dealer scales there that you could throw that thing on for us?
I could do.
You could do.
Yeah, I'll go and
Because
get
I think those things are getting on towards the likeness of Lexan.
it's the same thickness as Lexan. I know that. I'll go and weigh it. I'll find out.
Probably
Thanks,
a bit
Paul.
lighter.
That's your homework.
And you know, the pretty much all the technologies are capable of more than what most people believe they are capable of. And the SLS, you know, the nylon sintering technology, one of the ways that the companies save money is by reusing the unsintered nylon powder. The problem with that is that having been just below melting temperature for so long and having been in close proximity to what does get sintered, the powder isn't as finely powder as it went in the first time. So to save money, they mix in fresh powder with unfresh powder. And so then the resolution and quality of the print degrades. You know, the more used powder you put in, the less the quality is going to be. So you want the perfectest, most beautiful, smooth print ever, like what that looked like, you're going to have 100% fresh powder. And that's why when you go to Shapeways, you have these quality choices when you order something. You know, does it need to be, you know, super fine polished quality? That's going to be 100% brand new material. You go with the lower or the rougher quality, whatever the naming convention is, and that's going to have a percentage of material. It's bad, but that's why if you get the same exact thing printed in two quality levels, that's what the difference is. And you'll be able to see, you know, the lower quality has a lot more of that sandpapery texture feel, and the better quality will have less of it because it's just better material going in, so better print coming out.
Steve,
Better
is it
quality powder always costs more.
Steve, if I heard you correctly, did you say that the prints that you use, the material is PLA?
Yes. Correct. That's it.
That's, I mean, fortunately for filament printing, most PLA, ABS, PETG, the three most common filament types, they're all pretty much the same price these days. It used to be, you know, more for PETG or whatever, but these days it's about 20 bucks a spool. You know, you can get cheaper, you can get more expensive, but average 20 bucks a spool, regardless of material type. But yeah, PLA is a lot strong. A lot of people say, "Oh, PLA is the weakest. You got to get ABS or something like that." No, the application.
It's not.
It's
no,
not.
I saw videos this week that said that PLA was the strongest of the main three materials.
That's what I thought too.
And it depends on the application, you know, compression and stuff like that versus tension.
Yeah, this was stress testing. They printed a piece horizontally and vertically, the same piece, and then they did pull tests on it.
Yep.
And the score for across the layer lines was 8, and the score for pulling it so as to pull the layer lines apart was 3. So it's significantly stronger, more than twice as strong along its layer lines than it is pulling it across its layer lines by a factor of 8-3 comparison. Oh, that's really flexible.
So that's just like 3 or 4 layers worth of something. What material is that?
Yeah, now this is just PLA. It was a print I started, and I realized I had left something out of here, so I stopped. So I don't know, that's
a mil,
maybe a mil, not quite.
Yeah,
so about 4 layers.
But you can see that's, I mean, for what we do you really need any more strength than that on a chassis? I mean, I've seen some fly chassis that were this flexible.
Oh, well, you're in a different area now, chassis flexibility.
Yeah.
But
now here's the finished one. Yeah. You know, what you can see, it's much thicker. And again, this is for this 2J, and it's still pretty flexible, but this is, I think this chassis completed is 1.3 mil thick.
And you can always design in rails and other stiffening things in the print.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this one mounts here, the 2 at the front and the 1 at the back. So the body adds additional stiffness as well. So, I mean, for a chassis, I don't know why you'd really need anything other than PLA.
Well, you want it to be able to twist.
I think it's just a
Yeah, well, true. Well, most of the guys who want twist are running pods, though. You know, this is just a flat chassis sidewinder. And I'm a mag racer. This thing runs just terrific.
Yep, depends on the application, and even there's material quality is going to vary even between manufacturer or even color. You get some super cheap PLA and it's going to be brittle. You're going to have a hard time printing with it, and you get super cheap ABS or PETG that has the same problem. But
that blue is Inland brand from a company called Micro Center. It's $20 a spool, and this blue prints beautifully.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I look for the absolute bare bottoms, cheapest filament. I've never had any problem. Once a thing is printed, it's pretty much what it's printed, right? I've had some filament that is of such low quality that it is brittle and breaks even in the process of coming off the spool. But once I manage to actually get the printer to make something out of it, it's pretty much the same as the other stuff. So
I feel really sorry for Paul. He's been away long enough. I think he's gone to the dollar store for a pair of scales.
No, my scales I've just put new batteries in, and
oh, you just went outside and met your local drug dealer, did you?
Yeah, I did. There's plenty of
yeah, lend them to Alan. Alan's got a couple of lines to weigh up, I think.
Yeah. Actually, Paul, that's why I still use a triple beam balance. No batteries required.
Yeah.
I was going to ask John if he also got the Eagles playing in his background when he saw that picture that Alan was showing.
Yeah.
Lines on the mirror, lines on their face, right?
Yeah, it reminded me of my studio days.
What are those weighing in at, Paul?
It's not picking anything up.
No.
I've zeroed it. I've thrown it on the tray, and there's nothing there. And that's in grams.
Whole grams.
I've got a microgram one, and I've got a Porsche 997 or something. I'll do that.
Paul, have you put all the bits on, including the interior and glass, or?
Oh no, I've got glass. I didn't put the glass in because it's all in. It's all in the tray.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's not.
Wow.
You playing, Brian?
Is that in grams?
Yeah, that's a Lola T70. This is the body that they're offering for the 3D proxy. This is printed in clear blue PLA, weighed 10 grams. Now it's missing.
That's fantastic.
The windshield, the engine.
Yeah.
It'll be light.
That'll be competitive, that will. That's as light as you would expect it to be in an injection molded ABS, isn't it?
I would say pretty close.
Still trying to get your scale to work, Paul? Push on it.
I am.
It's still
push on it. It says, "Get off, you fat bastard."
Have you tried switching it off and back on again?
Yeah.
All right, so I've got a 997 Porsche also from them, but this has got two coats of fillable primer on it, and it weighs 9.9 grams, and the chassis for that weighs 9.7 grams, and the wing is 0.89 grams.
So chassis and wing are about 20 grams.
So all right, and I didn't have the interior on there, but body, chassis, and wing are 22.8.
So the heaviest component is the motor then.
All the running gear is going to be way heavier than that lot.
Yep.
But for comparison, I've got an AMG Mercedes GT3 from Scale Electric, and out the box with its stock interior, that's about 29 grams.
Just
the body.
Just the body shell.
And glass and.
Yeah, the complete body shell, including all its mirrors and glass, etc. So yeah, approaching 30 grand for a typical Scalextric saloon car. These things are going to come in under 20, certainly nearer 15, I would think.
Yep. That Porsche with its wing and interior is 16.6. And of course, it gets vacuum formed or just regular vacuum formed glass. So that's not going to be very heavy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that with paint and everything's probably not going to be 20 grams or just on 20 grams.
Yeah, anything under 20 is good.
I'd agree.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds like we're at a lull. Should I bring up another topic, or do you guys?
Yeah, let's have another topic.
Yes.
Let's all chip in and get Paul a proper scale.
Put it one way. This is heavier than the body.
Yeah,
is it empty though?
Hey,
No.
Paul, who are you kidding? Not for long.
Yeah.
Almost empty.
It's not even picking it up. The scales aren't even picking it up.
Yeah, something wrong with your scale, I think.
Yeah, it's me. I can't work them. They're digital.
Okay.
Paul, when you're done with that 3D printer, here's my address.
All right, so here is a topic that I'm not entirely sure of. You guys might have to help me interpret this. Here's what I copied from this topic suggestion. It says, the front wheel drive slot car as a performance comparison with rear wheel drive, what is the ultimate potential, bearing in mind that weight distribution is free and body shell fitment was not a problem? So I guess maybe what's better, front wheel or rear wheel?
Very easy answer.
Rear wheel.
The advantage of front wheel drive over rear wheel drive, 0. End of it. End of story.
I mean, I can't think of any reason to do front wheel drive other than in addition to rear wheel drive for like a raid or a rally car or something like that. But even then, it's
the biggest issue with front wheel drive is that constant competition between pressure on the brake and pressure on the tires.
Right.
That's the very first thing, getting decent pressure on the brake requires that you may have to reduce the pressure or the weight that the tires are carrying. So that's the first problem. The second problem is that as soon as the car comes out of the slot, you have no brakes, right? There's absolutely no resistance to the car skating across the track on the bottom of a guide and 2 free rotating wheels. So particularly on high-speed tracks, you can have some really, really high-speed crashes with a car that's front-wheel drive because nothing stops it.
You also need, that doesn't help handling, you need a certain amount of stick in the rear wheels as well. Otherwise, the thing just oversteers. It goes around and around 360 degrees. So when you add a certain amount of traction that's necessary on the rear tires, that affects the whole handling of the thing and slows it down on the straights a little bit and blah, blah, blah. Lots of guys have tried it. It's a lot of fun. A buddy of mine was going to have a proxy for 24th scale Tamiya Minis, which are actually not that big anyway. And the deal was you had to build a chassis and it had to be a front wheel drive car. So in that case, I thought it would have been a wonderful idea and a lot of fun. And you could probably make them go pretty well, but as Dennis said, rear wheel drive versus there's no debate. It's rear wheel.
Now, if there was a way that you could normally rules for slot cars say only one guide. So if there was a way that you could put the guide up front that steers the car and then put the brake somewhere else further back in the car, then you may have a chance. But having the two together at the front, not such a good idea.
Don't you just need a sprung? Don't you just need a sprung guide so that the guide can continue to keep a consistent pressure?
No.
Any spring is also
pushing the front of the truck.
Pushing the front of the
Yeah,
car
I
up.
grant you that. But how much pressure does a braid need to function well?
True. I mean, you could try it.
We're talking about it not as will a front wheel drive car function? Yes, you can make
Clearly it will
function. But is there any benefit to doing front wheel drive over rear wheel drive? Seems the answer solid no.
Zero.
Yeah. and I'm glad that you guys added to the why, because I mean I've never found it to be true, obviously, but now I understand more about why it's not true. So thank you for that. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to that little bit of discussion? Not much of a discussion.
You know, lots of guys, if you go back to the 60s, lots of guys have tried it. At the commercial tracks, every once in a while, you'd see somebody come along with one and try one out. But at a certain point in time, it was fairly well figured out and fairly well appreciated and understood that the rear wheels drive the car.
Well, Chris, weren't there actually commercially sold front wheel drive cars?
Oh yeah, sure. There's all kinds of different stuff. And don't get me wrong, it's like a front motored rear wheel drive slot car. I mean, they work just fine within racing other front motored rear wheel drive slot cars. And they go around just great. It all depends on where you want. And if you go to any British Slot Car Racing Association race or any wing car race or any IMCA race, there is zero anything other than rear wheel drive, rear motor cars.
And we drive on the right.
They're fun to play with.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not you're not going to have a good competition between a front wheel or front motor drive car versus a rear drive rear motor.
Yeah, it's not like the real world where you'd have a Mini beating a Galaxy, for example. Yeah.
It's like Martin at the beginning. Martin John put up his little old Formula Junior motored Scaly cars. You know, are they fast? No, but they're great to drive around and they're a lot of fun to play with. Not every single slot car has to be the fastest slot car in the world. And that's certainly very, very true.
Absolutely.
This is why single formula racing is so much fun, isn't it? You can take your old classics on pencil thin tires and just enjoy them at such a slow speed, but everybody's in the same boat.
Well, I mean, you have, different, our clubs have all kinds of different classes, skinny tires, slow motors. Very interesting, on the average club track, a car with skinny tires and a slower motor, well built and well driven, is not that much slower than a lot of the things that are perceived to be faster.
Well, didn't you get in trouble for using a slower motor yet being faster?
I got banned from using a slower motor.
That's racist for you.
How did you get banned?
Sorry?
I said, how did you get banned?
One of the clubs I went to, everybody was using a specific motor and having trouble. And this was a fairly large race. And I said, our motor's open. They said, yeah, you can use whatever you want. So I said, can I use a slower motor? And they all laughed at me and said, sure. So I put the slower motor in, won the race. And then they said, after that, slower motors are banned.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
He must be cheating because I'm cheating and he beat me.
Yeah. It must
That's
not
exactly right. That's exactly right.
Must have been a faster motor in disguise.
Well, just
a faster car.
Just to break up this bromance with slow that's going on here, I'm just going to show you what I've been building for next year's or this year's Formula One Unlimited London slot car. This is based on an all slot, and it's a model where I've modeled the Ferrari 1000 based on an all slot. The rear wing is all made by hand, so it's not injection molded, it's all folded and glued.
You have functional DRS on that.
Yeah, oh yeah, got a little monkey seat and everything. It all works. It's all right. And
what's an all slot, Alan, for the uninitiated?
An all slot. Osterero made these cars up until about 2 years ago.
Then Pendle sold them all off cheap.
Yeah, you won't see them anymore, but if you can see, that's not the standard front wing. I wanted the full louvered front wing. I'm finding it difficult to get an angle so that you can see that it's a really.
You can see it. Yeah, you can see it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
how well does the double diffuser work under it, Alan?
Actually, better than you. Now, I haven't road tested this car yet, or track tested it because of current situations. But like I said, to break up this like bromance love affair thing going on right now with slow stuff, right? This is a 35k motor.
That's it.
That
It's all
pulls
slot
400.
running really well on the track.
Yeah. So it's a motor I've never tried before. It's a scale auto motor, and it's 400 GCMs, 35k, and I put it on the test rig that I've got, and it is really sandbagging at that specification. It's pulling more than 38 at 12 volts. So
I wonder if that gear is going to last.
Oh, it'll be fine. I mean, it'll be fine. But it's not the gear that's not going to last. It's all the little stuff I've done with the bodywork. That's not going to last if I crash this.
Yeah.
So
what pinion and crown have you put on that, Alan?
It's like slotted stuff.
It's a crown.
It's a 928 slotted, because with that kind of RPM, I don't really need to think too much about gearing. Like I said, it's not been on the track yet. And when it gets on the track, I don't think I'm going to suffer with lack of power or lack of speed. It's a question of traction and handling. That would be the issue.
It's a very typical gear ratio for most motors, isn't it? But you're saying the motor's so powerful, you're certainly not going to top out on a straight, are you?
Well, you'd think not, but I mean, the wood green track is, oh, good grief, I've forgotten how. It's the longest plastic track I've ever seen. Straight. It's a very, very long straight. So.
This is the place that runs in the attic, is it not?
No, not at all. No, it runs in a church in Wood Green in London.
It's a church then. It looks like a vaulted ceiling. I've seen photographs, and it's a very interesting looking venue.
Alan, depending on how close you get to the track, you may want to wear some protection.
No, the guy at the end of the straight, the marshal at the end of the straight, is going to need protection, because if I get
wicket keeper out there,
if I get bounce D-slot as I'm hitting the brakes, then it's not going to brake at all. As the front bounces and comes out, the braids will lose contact, and then it really will hit the wall. So, but thankfully the marshal, who normally works down there, he doesn't pay attention anyway, so wake him up.
I thought you were going to say we got the local ice hockey guy from Canada to come and marshal.
I was going to say, yeah, you're going to have some explaining to do at Casualty, aren't you?
The goalkeeper, yeah.
It's all good.
A really fast car.
The full contact sport. Don't let anyone fool you.
Yeah.
I bought quite a few of those slots.
I do like them. I've got another one here that I've used quite a lot, and this is the one that currently has the track record.
Talking about having had great times and doing
this one has the track record down at Wood Green, and it's got a King 30 in it, and they've all got these cars have all got suspension, so the whole thing floats, the whole back end floats. And it's NSR angle winder suspension on the two back points and sidewinder suspension on the front point. Urethane tires, and this has been, this was a real stalwart for the first part of last year until racing stopped. But this one is currently looking unbeatable. But that's why I built the Ferrari, because I wanted something to be a lot quicker. I do love the all slots, and I know everyone's got this love fest going on with Maurizio's new modern F1 cars, but I really don't see that I'm going to have any fun with those at all, with that little motor and that lathe shaft. So I'm not really interested.
Tried the metal chassis for the all slots.
I have not, no.
They're pretty good. I've got quite a few of them.
So, Alan, does an F1 get around a plastic track quicker than a saloon car then? Significantly so?
Yes. 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 And the reason for that is the all slots. I mean, there's a good technical reason for that. I'll show you that. Let me just grab
I can see a few. I mean, the CG is going to be very low. The aero resistance is going to be very low. There might even be some real downforce.
0.
If you guys can see that, but that's with the axles the same. You can see that the all slot has got a significantly longer stretch guide length to the rear axle. So on a track like LSC, which is long and sweeping, probably much more akin to a wood track than you'd think of a plastic track. When you've got that kind of guide length, you can really cruise through the long sweeping corners at great speed, and the back end isn't going to lose adhesion.
What about as far as weight, Alan? How heavy are your F1s?
They're about the same as a Mosler. I mean, I'll try and get them in where was I? About sort of 80. I think it's about 80 grams I have these things weigh in at.
And most of that, I'm sure, is the motor, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they're a long can motor, so yes, it is. I normally put weights on the bottom. Let me just check this one.
Hopefully his scale will work.
Hey, I've told you how it always. Look in the messages.
Oh, I didn't notice that. So 80 grams is a good weight for a slot car.
What is it, Alan? Sorry?
18.
Correct. I didn't check it because I can't be bothered to go over there and figure out if my scales work. I just can't be bothered.
You can just go to the bathroom.
I'm normally quite diligent because I write, if you look at any of the chassis I have, I write the details on the bottom. There's a meters per second on the bottom of each one, along with the gear ratios on there. And I also write the weight, normally in the top corners here. So that
how do you measure the meters per second? Is that on your jig, or is that actually on the track?
Yeah, no, that's on a rolling road I built. So that allows me to make calculations, work out whether I'm going to up the gearing or down the gearing. But it is a rolling road rather than meters per second on the track. And I would like to build a radar gun for the track. That would be fun to prove, for the proof.
Well,
you actually only need 2 timers.
Actually, if you want a really inexpensive radar gun, there's a Hot Wheels radar gun you can get. It's a hoot to use.
Yeah, I've got one of those. It's fantastic.
That's fun. Yeah.
I've used that extensively. It's really quite good.
Or your local constabulary in the back of one of their cars.
Alan, if you crack your wings and that, you can buy new ones from Safeways.
Yes, I saw the 3D stuff on Shapeways.
I bought loads of them. Here's my all slots. I've got what I've got here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got another 6 out the back.
Are you?
I thought it was such a good car when they come out. I thought I'd buy a load of them because they're going to sell quick, and they did. So I got a few.
Are your motors open, Alan?
That's run well. I've got an aluminium shaft and a steel shaft for chassis for them as well.
Motors. Are you asking about London Slot Cars club motor regulations?
Yeah.
It's an odd one because the club is sort of run by Steve Carter. And I always characterize clubs by the kind of cars they run. And my primary club, NASCAR would, I would say, is an angle winder club. They would say not, but I'd say that the majority of our classes are angle winders. Whereas at London Slot Car, down at Wood Green, they strongly favor inlines. And so many of the classes have restrictions on the speed and power you can use for angle winders, but leave the inline unrestricted. And I don't think they really thought that through until I turned up 2 years ago and really looked through the rules and thought, right, well, no one's using a King 25, I'll use a King 25. No one's using a King 30, I'll use a King 30. And now no one's using the Outlaw, so I'm going to use the Outlaw. There are no restrictions providing it's an inline motor, and that's for almost.
Have you tried any of the Euro? Have you tried any of the Pro Slot motors?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
Okay.
The only restriction there is that rare earth magnets are just not allowed. No rare earth magnets.
Well, yeah, you can. There's a whole range of Pro Slots. The Euro Mark 1s, Euro Mark 2s, all have ceramic magnets, and they bolt right into your motor pod.
4002 would.
Yeah.
I'll have a look. I'll have to have a look through the authorized manufacturer list. Might be an interesting loophole for me to find. But to be honest, if I can get this Outlaw motor to work without taking off, then that'll be another challenge later.
I'm curious as to why the Pro Slot popped into your head, and is that better in some way?
Because it's a lot lighter.
Most ways.
Most ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're lighter and they have way more horsepower, even than that Outlaw, I think.
Yeah, it's designed as a proper slot car motor. It was never designed to brush your teeth with. So it's got, it's completely rebuildable. It's got a good size comm, just a much better motor. And you can buy them in a variety of motors from 25,000 all the way up to 100,000 RPMs.
These are the ones with the open brush gear and brush springs and brushes and brush shunts and everything, aren't they?
Yeah, well, they can be at the high end. I mean, as the motor gets faster and draws more current and spins quicker, you need stiffer springs to hold the brushes onto the comm and a bunch of stuff. But their base motors you can buy for 15 to 20 bucks, and they're very quick motors and rebuildable. And the other advantage over the lawn can motors is they're much lighter.
Okay.
There you go. There's one right there.
That one has double ball bearings and a hand-wound armature. It's regular ceramic magnets. It's about a 25,000 RPM motor. And the only issue that I ever had in that car was it had too much brakes.
Yeah, that was the one you had in that Proxy that
Yep.
that had that X12. Did not have that. What arm was that?
It's not an X12. It's something that my friend Russell got Pro Slot to wind specifically for him, and I don't remember what the spec was, but it's nowhere near as fast as an X12.
No.
It's a very nice, smooth motor, but it just had too much brakes.
Well, I remember on that hill climb that we ran on, the thing just you couldn't get it to go.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the one.
So variations of that, Alan, they're all, if you're interested or not, the can end is all drilled like your lawn can motors. So this motor will bolt right in, or variations of this motor will bolt right into your all slot, scale auto, slotted pod, no issues whatsoever.
They'll also snap into the regular pods too, because they're the same front and back as the FC can, the FC 130 cans.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that sounds like my birthday present this year. Sorted out. Thanks, guys.
I mean, just something to look at. It's not, when you were saying a love affair with slow, some of us like slow, but some of us have spent a lot of time going much quicker than we normally go on here. So the 200,000 RPM mark is a mark that both Dennis and I really like.
So they're only available purely in America, or are they?
You can, I mean, they're built and designed in the States by a guy named Dan DeBella, but most shops you should be able to get them at.
And you could probably order them directly from Pro Slot as well.
Yeah, you order them from Pro Slot. Professor Motor carries them. A whole bunch of guys carry them.
Writing it down here.
And that just moves the problem somewhere else. I would suggest that traction would become a problem with a
Well,
motor.
Traction's always a problem.
What kind of tires? So it's
It wouldn't be a problem with if the motor was. Why? I was going to say front wheel drive and the guide being there, you wouldn't have a traction problem then, would you? It's just looping back.
I think no traction, therefore not a problem. Yes.
If you have
No, it would still go along the slot in a straight line. It just wouldn't get any grip, and it would spin all the way down the straight.
Yeah. What do they say? If you don't have a traction problem, it just means you haven't got enough horsepower yet.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. As a talking about traction, I'm interested. I know this is it's a bit related, but not quite related. I know everybody's into their tire trues and making sure their tires are glued and trued and everything's nice and straight. But is anybody balancing their wheels? Does anybody do that? Do you guys do that?
I don't do it personally, but if you get into the high levels of 1/24 scale flat track racing, the stuff that the Czechs do and that some of the European guys do, Eurosport and GT12 and things like that with foam tires, those guys all balance not only their wheels and tires, but the whole rear axle assembly. Because those are angle winders, all of them, and very narrow angle winders. So what they do is they'll actually glue the spur gear onto the axle using one of those really, really high bond Loctite components. And then they'll machine off most of the aluminum hub. So there's no set screw. They'll machine down the hub completely. And then they will take that and they'll balance that. And then they will put a set of wheels and tires on and balance those. Or they'll balance the wheels and tires individually on one of those little magnetic balancers, right? That look like a propeller balancer for a radio control plane. And they'll balance those. And I know some of the guys that I run with in 1/24 scale, they'll balance their stuff like that. But I'm not.
I've got to admit, I balance stuff in HO scale. The RPMs in HO scale are so high that anything that's out of balance just shudders up. So I think it matters at any size, particularly if the RPM is high.
Something to look into, Alan.
Well, yeah, especially now that I know that
in HO, how big are the wheel weights in HO?
Well, they're as big as they need to be to get the balance. The truth of the matter is that an armature in HO can be balanced using super glue. You can just put glue in the windings, and you once that glue's gone set up, you've increased the weight of wherever you put the glue. So I used to put super glue into armature windings, and they use a material called epoxy, which is a little bit like a plasticine, and then nip a little bit off with the fingers and jam that into the windings. That's an accepted method of balancing an armature. But I would balance nearly every component in an HO car.
Yeah, I mean,
just
the
because
guys who are running Eurosport, all of those armatures are dynamically balanced on $25,000 balancing machines. Yeah, but the wheels and axles at the rear, they do those statically on a shaft with pointed ends hung between magnets.
Static balancing. And what's interesting about that, Dennis, is that those foam tires tend to balance really, really evenly just as soon as they're trued.
Sure.
The foam itself, as long as it doesn't change in density much around the diameter of the tire, it naturally is very well balanced. But
yeah, the foam is
it's the grub screw in the wheel, I understand. But another technique that I've seen used is to cut pieces of solder and jam them underneath a foam tire before it's trued. In the area where you would get the glue, you can squash a piece of solder, slip it in the gap, and get the balance, and then do the final truing.
Sure, I haven't seen that. Yeah, normally what I've seen the guys do is little bits of tape, either the very thin lead tape or plastic insulation tape, or maybe a little bit of that blue tacky putty that they use, something like that. Most of the problem with the foam tires is when the guys are running molded plastic wheels rather than machined magnesium or the carbon fiber rims that are there are little imperfections in the actual wheel itself from the molding process, and so they don't bother to clean that up before they put the tire on it. And so if you're buying tires that are already mounted, then you're going to do your final grind to size and your own balance.
Of course, truing a thing tends to get it closer to its to a balance anyway.
Sure, of course, yeah.
If you take a plastic wheel like a 32 scale slot car rear axles normally got out of the box, and take your tire razor style truer and take the tires off and do the wheels before you do the tires, then you tend to get things truer and better in balance.
Do that all the time. It's the
naturally.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Balancer.
Prop balancer. Mm.
That's what I used for the RC when I was racing an RC to balance the wheels.
Sure, that one's on bearings, right?
That was on bearings.
Yes.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
That one's on bearing, which is fine for an RC car because the tire and wheel is big. When you get to a slot car wheel, which is much smaller and lighter, you're probably better off with it in between two magnets.
And you will find prop balancers out there that work that way.
Yeah, well, AB Slot Sports sell one for slot cars. So.
Yeah, I've got one for HO armatures.
Yeah.
We used to run them down to Stanley blades to balance them.
That will work too, yeah.
What's the reason behind that, then? It's not using bearings. Is it because there's too much drag on such a low mass wheel tire combo?
Absolutely correct. Yes, you got it first time out. Yeah, so there's an aluminum one, right? It's just two aluminum towers with magnets in them, and then you get a shaft with it that has very, very fine, very nicely ground points on it, which then hangs between the magnets, and then you would put your tire on that and balance it that way.
And of course, that pin only touches one of the magnets, doesn't it?
Correct.
It's almost a perpetual motion machine. Bloody hell.
Yeah, you keep there's very little gap. I've only got about a millimeter gap there, but it prefers one magnet to the other, right?
That looks like a really high-end toothpick.
It is, yeah.
Funny shaped teeth, John.
Yeah. Yeah, he's one of those guys when he says that looks sexy, and I would have to say you got a strange idea of sex, man.
Dennis,
yes, sir.
Those pro slot motors, I've just looked one up. You know the Mura end bells? Would they go on one of those? Because it looks vaguely familiar.
It's very similar, but the Mura end bells would be too big.
Are they? Oh.
That motor is much smaller. That motor's end bell is about the size of the end bell that's on an SCX motor. You remember the SCX RX 41s and 42s? Those end bells are about that size. So Mura, particularly the Secan ones that we get now, that you still get nowadays, would be way too big.
And it just brought back memories.
Yeah, those motors were designed for the Worlds in 2009 in Toronto, and there was a bit of a collaboration by the guy who hosted the Worlds, Mark Campbell, and Dan DeBella, and a couple of other folks. And one of the parameters was the original need for the motor was that it was much more consistent. Everybody was running Fox 10s at the time, and guys were crushing the cans to reduce the gap between the arm and the magnets, and doing a whole bunch of funky things that were not really on. So that motor was designed back then, and one of the other parameters was that it would be great if it would just snap right in to an existing FC 130 type motor bracket. So you can take any of the Euro Mark IIs and just either bolt them in or snap them into any pod that takes an FC 130 motor.
Because we used to put shims on the Muras. We used to put shims just to bring the magnets out. Muir actually done little shit, and in the end used to get Coke cans and cut the Coke can out and just put them in.
Yeah,
Just
that's to move the magnets in, not out.
That's what I mean. Sorry.
Got one. I've got one right here if you want to see one.
Yeah.
Okay, so this particular one, let me see if I can find a way. Ah, there we go. How's that?
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, that one's meant to remain sealed, yeah?
Yes, this one was one that I was racing at one stage, and there are certain series here where the motors have to be sealed, and so this is a motor that's sealed. So they have this tape that is wrapped around the screws that hold the end bell onto the can, and if you try to take that tape off, it just disintegrates. So when you start racing these, people will look at that tape and make sure that it's solid all the way around and covers the screw heads, and they know that it hasn't been opened.
So the can actually is screwed in. It's not pressed in like a
FC130.
The end bell is a molded piece, right? Molded plastic piece, and then it fits in, and there are actually two little tabs that hold it on like an FC130, but then they put 4 screws radially in like that, because those little tabs, if you were to open them and try and close them again, they break. So
but the Murers had 4 pins, didn't they?
Excuse me?
Murers had pins that went into the side.
Oh yeah, they had those horrible little pins to start with. Yeah, that you needed a set of good nail clippers to take them out. Yeah.
So you can't actually rotate the end bell on there and change the timing then?
There's not enough space now.
So that's the one I found, which is exactly the same as what you just put up, Dennis.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And for 1/32 scale, those things started right down at the PS4000 is like a 27 or 29,000 RPM motor, which actually it runs really nice in a 132 car. I've got quite a few cars that run that motor. It was much the same as the 29K slotted motor that we used to get way back. Maybe not quite. And then they had that one. They had a 4001, which was about a 33,000 or 37,000.
37, Dennis. Yeah.
37, and then the 4002 was the 47,000, and they made that in a couple of versions. And since then, of course, things have absolutely skyrocketed to the point where you can get them now with a 55 turn of 29 gauge wire in it, which probably turns 90,000 or 100,000 RPM.
Yeah. If anyone's buying them and you look on the ProSlot website, do not buy anything that's called a Velociraptor motor.
I've just seen that. I was just going to ask that.
No, those are all drag motors.
Yeah.
And they're meant to run for 1 or 2 seconds at a time. And
they all have neo magnets too.
Yeah.
So they probably have way too much brakes.
Yeah.
I'm amazed that you guys know all this stuff off the top of your heads, and I'm still looking for my keys.
Well, that's because
John, I think John left those keys in the bowl at the last party. No one picked them out, John.
Maybe he got a little too close to Alan's lines
actually,
on his mirror there.
Wayne, I might have put them in the wrong bowl.
The punch bowl.
Okay.
both of the lower end ones, the 26K and the 37K, are both really nice motors for 32nd scale.
32 cars, yeah.
You don't need anything more than that, and if you do, and both of them, they have 3 different variants of brush spring tension and different lengths of motor brushes. So if you do get one of those at a next chat, I can tell you how to play around with the brush springs and the actual motor brushes too. They're great motors, but they're very, very torquey. They're very coggy motors in that it's almost hard to turn the motor shaft compared to the motors that most of us are normally used to running. So you can either fiddle with the springs a little bit or get some cut down motor brushes, which will leave a bit of the tension on the comm, and it really helps the motor out a lot.
So
Yeah,
Chris,
because they have a lot of brakes.
Are they sort of very sensitive to voltage then?
Well, I mean, no more than any other motor. It's just that they have strong magnets and fairly strong brush springs. So the faster a motor goes, the more brush spring tension you need to keep the brush on the comm without it doing damage. So these are appreciably stiffer, if you will, when trying to turn the motor shaft. So it needs a certain amount of voltage to overcome the magnetic drag and the brush drag and all the rest of the stuff. So a little bit more like an on-off switch, not a bit more, but you can get around that by gearing. So, you know, when you would normally gear most motors 2.5 to 1, 3 to 1, the quicker motors, you can gear them numerically a lot higher to overcome that and do a few things. So, but they're good motors and they make a range, but for anybody who's circuit racing, do not buy anything that has a V in front of it for Velociraptor.
What those motors again you were saying?
Sorry?
What was the you gave off a load of size motors. What was the one?
There's a Pro Slot, they're Pro Slot Euro Mark 1s, and you can go, you want the one that's 26,000 K or 37 K. Nothing.
PS 4000 or PS 4001.
Yeah.
Yes.
And both of those are cheap and cheerful motors. They're wonderful motors because you can do a lot with them, and I think they're less than $15 US.
So what's the 1/24 motors then? Are they completely different motor? Because there's some on eBay listed as 1/24.
Well, it depends on the class. Depends. I mean, where Dennis runs, they use a lot of those style motors in certain classes, and then it goes up and up and up and up and up. So, you know, the motors that I think I showed a motor a while ago. I don't even know if I can find one. I think I showed it a couple of weeks ago. This is not.
And are those motors still running phosphor bronze bushes, or are they ball raced?
Oh,
Depends
all
on
ball
the
races.
motor. Some of them have ball races, some of them have oil lights.
You know, you can get this. This is not my car. This is actually one of the best slot car racers in the whole world by far. Can you see that?
Yeah.
This is a Formula One car owned by a guy named Vladimir Horky. And Vladimir Horky's won 30 some odd world championships. And you can see the size of this motor is a peanut. Tiny, 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 tiny. It's about $400 US to buy.
Would you zoom in on that motor for us?
I don't think I can.
Ah,
okay. Click the little magnifier with the plus there.
It is already zoomed in.
Oh, is it?
No, I'm just kidding.
Better?
Here we go.
Sorry, guys.
Now you can scrub it to the side.
There you go.
Okay.
So the lamination stack on that motor is probably 1/4 of an inch long. The magnets are about 300 thousandths long. Yeah. The whole motor is probably under 1/2 inch long.
Yeah.
But
it's got no can.
No, the can goes around the sides of the motor.
It's called strap.
Yeah, it's a strap motor. They have those have sintered samarium cobalt magnets in them, which are even stronger than the Neos that we use now. And probably also multi-segment magnets, meaning that there are a number of different segments of magnet on each side to give the curvature and to adjust the way in which the field shape flows through the armature.
Yeah, all of the, I think this is an 8-segment mag on this one. And all of the magnets are grounded and positioned on the can, so they fire directly at the center of the arm.
We used to do things to Muras like that in the 80s.
Sorry?
We used to chop the Muras down like that in the 80s.
Well, yes. I mean, part of the, you can, in a lot of motors, the can actually helps the magnetism circulate the armature. So with the Mura magnets that we used to run, they needed some sort of can to increase the magnetic field. These bloody things are so strong, the magnets in here, you don't need any can material whatsoever.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can find another one just to give you.
I've got two in my hands here. One is the motor that we've just been looking at.
Yeah.
Right. And this one is just the can version of one of those that you've been looking at. And this is quite a big one.
Blimey.
So you can see it's like, it's, you know, it's not it's a little bit different in length. It's about this, but in height, it's like 2/3 of the height total. Right.
Yeah.
And it's just tiny little thing.
So Dennis,
and as I say, this is quite a big one.
And that looks almost like an 030 motor.
Yeah, it's about that size. What would the weight be?
Yeah.
With an armature in it, I'd have to check. But
and does it bend when you drop it on the table like that?
Well, it was the Pro Slot that I dropped, so that's okay. These ones you have a problem because the magnets are glued in, so you have to be really careful about dropping them because sometimes you could crack the glue, and then the magnet will fall out. Okay, so the Pro Slot motor is 23.6 grams. This one, without its armature in, is just 6 grams, and with an armature, let me see if I've got an armature that would go in there. So there's an armature that would go in it. So with its armature, it's 13.5. So it's just 13.5 as opposed to 23.7. So
does it have an end bell that comes off the same as the can motor?
Yeah, exactly the same. Believe it or not, the end bell is machined out of for you guys aluminium, for the rest of us aluminum. But they hard anodize the material so that it's non-conductive, and then all the screws and everything that go into it are all insulated with little fiber washers and things, so there's no shorting across it. But it's an aluminum end bell with a 5mm by 2mm bearing in it, and the same at the end of the can with a 5mm by 2mm bearing in there, right? And I mean the segments of the magnet, if you measure the thickness, they're only about 2mm thick all the way around each side.
And are they single magnets or are they an array like the last one?
These are an array, and this is the same. This is the same one. It's an array.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm not going to stop the conversation, but I am going to stop the recording. So if you want to say goodbye, and we'll see everybody next week. Bye.
Thanks, Greg.
Bye.